Hello, everyone. And today, for our 11th session, we will be looking at technology. You know. All right. I want to, before we look at the detailed content, I want to mention the core points presented in Broder's introduction and conclusion, and the rapid revolutionary changes and technological advances made by humanity such as the development of the aqueduct, gunpowder, or printing. Um, um, this kind of the changes did not emerge suddenly from nothing. Instead, they progressed through the accumulation of knowledge and minor gradual improvements in technology, which at times was slow and ambiguous, enough that it was difficult to even call them advancements. For example, the improvements first occurred in minor areas, such as daily labor of the blacksmith and the plow of the farmer or the windmill. Furthermore, any given change is not caused by a single factor, but rather by the connection of diverse elements. For in this chapter, the chapter 5 and chapter 6 is are about technology, and for the latter we will see next week. In chapter, we will examine technologies that are a bit more basic and foundational. In chapter 6, we'll look at more advanced developments like cannons, shipbuilding, and transportation. Specifically, in today's class, we will be studying iron steel, which represents the fundamental energies of mankind, including domestic animals, livestock farming, wind power, wood charcoal, and the foundation for a revolutionary development. So I mentioned the interrelationship between the cause and effect. So you guys need to figure out this meaningful explanations about the history and the history of technology. Um, let's look at a few significant points regarding the interpretation of history as presented by Brodel. The first one is history is not simple. Don't simplify causal relationships. Just as in other fields, when tracing the causal and correlational relationships between cause and effect in the history of technology, one should not approach as it as a single simple cause and effect progression. Yeah, from time to time I emphasize this point. Yeah, you guys should remember this one and this part especially. I this point is so important that um I will be able to check your understanding about this point through for this final exam. Okay, all right. Uh, anyway, The numerous and complex causes are like a machine of many changes of gear, uh, like you see in the picture. As Broder argues, if you were to claim that the enormous result known as the Renaissance was caused only by the increase in the development and distribution of eyeglasses and the resulting rise in literacy, would that be convincing? Or what if you claimed it was because indoor lighting improved and became brighter? If you claim the Renaissance was due to the invention of printing, the third cause would likely be accepted, but the first two causes might make people question it. Therefore, Brodel insists that the advancements of technology should not be viewed purely as technological history alone, but must be examined in the context of society, which changes slowly in layers and complexly. Um, uh, in the second, this is the not brothers, but your instructors, me, my, uh, yeah, my summary, and I think there are aspects that similar yet slightly different to the previous point. The first is to remember that the multiple causes interact in a complex way to produce a result. The second is not hastily judge causality, cause and effect, or the order of precedence, the order of the presence of the cause and effect. For example, this is a broadest example. The long side, as you see in the picture, like long, like yeah, side used by by farmers had a problem where it scattered the grain kernels. So even though it existed long before the 19th century, it was not commercialized until then. However, in the 19th century, even though it still caused some scattering kernels, a need arose to speed up the harvesting process quickly, and prioritizing speed over the volume of the yield grain yield led to the long side being commercialized. In other words, the time a certain technology is invented and the time is fully put into use can have a correlation to external conditions or context entirely separate from the invention itself. Yeah, another example. If we look at the relationship between the steam engines and the industrial revolution, we often assume, in a very simple way, that the industrial revolution happened because the steam engine was invented. But the truth is, the steam engine had already been invented long before the industrial revolution really took off. In fact, it's more accurate to say that the Industrial Revolution created the conditions that allowed the steam engine to spread and become widely used. Interesting, right? This is broadest explanation about um, the thinking the other way around. Um, yeah, another case. The first one to reach the Americas wasn't Columbus. It was actually the Vikings long before him. But for the Vikings, the America was quickly forgotten. They simply didn't need a new world yet, so it didn't matter to them. So they didn't need the map anymore. So now let's take a look at humanity's and resources in the following order, like human engine or human power, and animal power, wind, war engines, and finally wood and coal. First, let's start with human beings. Uh, as we can see from expressions like the crowns of creation, rational animals, or tool using humans, we are the ones who control, develop, and advance everything listed below. In that sense, we are the most important source of all. But if we convert our abilities into pure physical power, how much energy do we actually produce? Yeah, if you convert human muscular strength into horsepower, it comes out to only about 3 over 100 to 4 over 100 of 1 horsepower. So, compared to the power of a horse, the physical strength of human possess is obviously very limited. So, in the time of Louis the 13th, if a laborer worked using a Low's horse or someone else's horse, he was repeatedly paid only about half the usual wage. But if we go by the calculation we just look at, that would mean human strength is being treated as equivalent to half of our horsepower. Is that an unrealistic overestimation? Clearly not. And here's why. Humans can use a wide range of tools, and because we have skill and flexibility, we are able to produce a far greater force and accomplish much more work than our raw muscle strength alone would suggest. Excuse me. This is why Broder says that technical progress comes from finding a rational balance between human labor and alternative source of energy. Yeah, this the definition of like progress or the development, or in the strong sense, the revolution is kind of a reasonable balance between human labor and its alternative power. Um, yeah. Let's look at the other animal, the one form of alternative power. Uh, yeah, rather than a human power. Uh, from the left to right, we have a llama, a mule, a horse, an ox, and a camel. Now, the history of humans using domesticated animals varies by region, of course. But if we look at first at the New World, before European animals arrived. That is before the 15th, 16th centuries. The llama was essentially the only major animal available for transportation. And you know what? This is made by the AI. By I tried to resolve the actual size of the of each animal, but I couldn't. And AI is not able to do that kind of fixation. So I really disappointed about the efficiency of the AI tools. But anyway, Lava is a little bit smaller than uh, the mule, and a mule is also smaller than a horse. Maybe a camel should be larger than this, right? Anyway, check yourself, check for yourself. And then brothel are used these these animals not by his source, but by the like uh, he separated the new world and the old world. And in the new world, there's no animals like llama for transporting or things like that. And in this picture in the left, um, llama were used as pack animals in caravan formations. However, llama were not very suitable for heavy transport. Even so, they were practically the only domesticated animal capable of working in the high Andes mountain areas. By contrast, once mules arrived from Europe, they quickly became the key transport animals, though there were a few regional exceptions. In terms of everyday life and the economy, they were absolutely essential across the New World as a whole. Their numbers reached 1 to 2 million. Um, um, but Peru used about 500,000 mules for trade, and every year roughly 50,000 uh, more were imported from the Argentine pampas. So overall, across the New World, we are talking about roughly 1 to 2 million mules, with Spain itself accounting for about 50,000 annually. Cattle and horses were also used for transport. Oxen in particular spread widely as draft and hauling animals. But the real indicator of how important mules were is this. In some regions, a horse actually costs less than a mule. That's how valuable mules are. Now the old world is more complex than the new world. Camels, for example, were used in regions where people couldn't easily live in hot deserts and cold weathers. In Peru, llama were used as pack animals in caravan formation. However, llamas were not very suitable for heavy transport. Even so, they were practically the only domesticated animal capable of working in the high Andes mountain areas. Uh, By contrast, when mules arrived from Europe, then they quickly became the key transport animals, though there were a few regional exceptions. In terms of everyday life, the economy, they were absolutely essential. Across the New World as a whole, their numbers reached 1 million to 2 million. Peru used about 500,000 mules for trade, and every year roughly 50,000 more were imported from the Argentine pampas. So overall, across the New World, we are talking about roughly 1 to 2 million mules, with Spain itself accounting for about 50,000 annually. Of course, cattle and horses were also used for transport. Oxen, in particular, are spread widely as draft and hauling animals. But the real indicator of how important mules were is this. In some regions, a horse actually cost less than a mule. That's how valuable mules were. Now the old world is more complex than the new world, and camels, for example, were used in regions where people couldn't easily live in hot deserts and cold deserts alike. And across the Islamic world, camels were almost a monopoly, and they proved to be extraordinarily efficient animals for carrying loads and long distance transport. Muslim merchants were truly the masters of transportation across the old world, and they had connected Asia and Europe, serving as the key intermediaries. Um, and in their commercial activity, the camel caravan clearly demonstrated the camel's superiority as a commercial transport animals. Cattle were found almost everywhere in the old world, except in the far north of Siberia and tropical regions. They were especially important in agriculture for pulling plows, and they were widely used as draft and transport animals. Um, yeah, I remember in my childhood, yeah, from rural areas, I have from time to time so many like this picture, the transporting uh, the cattle as transporting animals. It says that oxen cost about 30% more to maintain the horses, but they had one major advantage. You could eventually use them for meat. And by contrast, horses are faster and can work longer hours, but they eat much more. They also have a drawback. As they age, their efficiency drops sharply. Even so, horses were central figures throughout history, almost like a family to Europeans. And when the shoulder collar harness, uh, like this, uh, was invented in the 12th century, it dramatically increased how much power a horse could deliver. In the Roman period, one horse was said to do the work of about four slaves. But with the introduction of the new harness, a horse effective labor output increased 4 to 5 times. That meant a single horse could now match the work of roughly 20 slaves as role also expanded, from being used mainly in warfare to becoming essential in agriculture, culture, and commercial as well. In China, if we look at the regional differences in the use of horses, in China, horses were preferred mainly for military purposes, warfare, and imperial relay post system. And compared to Europe, China generally use fewer horses in everyday economic activities. In India and Africa, horses were far more precious, basically luxury items. In the early 16th century, one horse was worth about 12 slaves, and later still worth the equivalent of 5 slaves. In the Islamic world, the horses was considered as aristocratic of animals. It served as the mobile strike force of the army, the cavalry. Even in the 19th century, horses were mostly limited to soldiers, the wealthy and nobility. Using horses for agriculture, like plowing fields, didn't really begin until the 1920s after the World War One. In Europe as well, horses were primarily important for military use, and because wars were more frequent there, the demand for horses was inevitably very high, and that's why stud farms was widespread across Europe, and high quality horses were literally worth their weight in gold. Similarly, horses were crucial as transport animals for supplying animals, hauling artillery. They were exceptions, though. For example, in Provence, in southern France, mules were actually more expensive than horses. And it is just an exception. It's very exceptional. Um, so in everyday life, horses were essential for supply, transport, trade, and travel. There was practically no area that didn't depend on them. Every city across Europe has stables like this, and which functions much like a modern day car repair center or car repair shop, service station. Yeah. All right. Um. Let's take a break and I come back for the second session.